Because it does no good for one sinful person to die for another sinful person. There's nothing accomplished. It takes a perfect person to die for a sinful person that brings salvation. You see, what you're seeing in this story is a reflection of God's good news to you and me early on in Scripture. What you're seeing in this Bible passage here is what we call a type and a shadow. It's where the Old Testament is letting us in on the good thing that's getting ready to come in the New Testament. Are you with me? It's where God is allowing you and me to look into the mirror and see the true reflection of what is to come. You see, when we notice this story about Abraham and Isaac going up this mountain, it reminds us of another journey that God took with his son up that same mountain 2,000 years later. And when Jesus Christ went up that mountain, that very one we believe, he was also carrying the wood on his back for the ultimate sacrifice. And that's exactly what it meant in Scripture when Abraham said, on this mountain, God will provide. And God continues to provide. The reason you and I are allowed to see this story is because it reminds us again and again and again of God's love for you and me. Now in Genesis 22, as Michelle read to us there, we see this testing that Abraham is facing. He's being called to give up the very son through whom God was giving him the promise for the future. Now, I want you to understand something. The way you and I know this is a test of faith is because it doesn't make sense at the time. The way we know a test of faith when it comes is it doesn't make sense at the time. But those of us who have been there know that if we remain faithful to God, what happens? In time, God answers and God blesses, and we look at it and it's an aha moment. So that's what God was doing. Have you ever been there? If you're there right now and you're being tested and your faith is really being tried, I want to encourage you to hang on. Hold on. Since about March of this year, how many people's faith has been tested? Since this glorious time we're in right now as a nation and a world, how many's faith have been tested? Huh? How about your patience? I'll even run right out there. How about your attitude? Hey, boy, I started meddling. Went from preaching to meddling just like that. Didn't I? Did you see that? Let me run back over here. You see, what you have to understand is that the way we know this is a test of faith is it doesn't make sense at the time. But later on we get it. Later on we realize, yeah, okay, that's what God is doing in my life. Now, today I want you to notice with me, there's three questions we need to ask ourselves when the faith that we're going through, the faith test we're having, doesn't make sense. There's three things you need to be able to square. There's three things that you need to be able to answer when you come to these moments you say, this just doesn't really make sense right now, okay? And we notice from Abraham's example, the first one is, can I choose between two loves? That's the first question. Can I choose between two loves? That's obvious for you and me. We're thinking that's the situation, right? Abraham has a choice to make. But in reality, there was no choice to make. There was a command to follow. You see, that answers it all. That answers it, doesn't it? When God makes a decision, when God has a will, when God has a plan, He doesn't ask for our vote on it. He asks for our obedience to it. When God says, this is the path I've chosen, He doesn't say, well, you can flip a coin and decide whether or not you're going to do it. No, God says, you go and trust me, and I'm with you as you go along. You see, in obeying God, Abraham was forced to choose to kill his own child. And make no mistake about it, God knew exactly what He was asking for. He goes out of His way to mention how He knows how much Abraham loves Isaac. In addition to this, Isaac's death would mean the end of that promise that God had made to Abraham, to make of him a great nation. So really, here's the dilemma Abraham faced, to choose between the God he loved or the son he loved. So was there really a choice at all? No. There was no choice at all. There was none. Pastor, what are you talking about? It's this one word, and it's not on your screen, but you need to write it down. The one word that makes a difference in times of testing of your faith is this one word, surrender. Have I surrendered to God. What do you mean surrender? Have I given my everything over to Him? Have I said, Lord, it's not my will, but thy will? Be careful when you say that. Be careful when you say, my future's in your hands, Lord. Be careful when you say, Lord, I want your perfect will in my life. You want to know why? Because you have surrendered every right to Him. But let me also tell you this. It's the only pathway to joy. It's the only pathway to grace. It's the only pathway to understand what's going on in life around us. It's like the old song says that we used to sing, is your all on the altar of sacrifice laid? Your heart does the Spirit control? You can only be blessed and have peace and sweet rest when you yield Him your body and soul. Once you yield your body and soul, there's nothing left. It's all given to Him. All to Jesus, I surrender. All to Thee, I completely give. Think about that. It's a life of surrender.